This is BRICS Global Television Network's Daily Roundup. We begin with the headlines. Mumbai police crack down following billboard collapse. And China-US relations strained. And Brazil meteorologists use technology to better predict future storms. Hello, I'm Juliet Newell. We begin in India, where Mumbai police have opened a criminal case against the owner of a billboard that collapsed on Monday, killing 14 people and injuring 75 others. It's understood Mumbai police have opened a culpable homicide case against the company that installed the signage, Eco Media. The enormous sign, measuring 70 by 50 meters, came down as strong winds, rain and dust storms howled through the city. The National Disaster Response Forces, Gaurav Chitohan, says the sign came down on top of a petrol pump.
We are not able to use equipment in case of fire, and another hazards are related to this. So we are using heavy cranes just to evacuate just to remove the debris, and this will help us to remove all the bodies buried under it.
City officials are blaming shoddy construction. Councillor Rakhi Jadhav
is being created. This is not a disaster. Okay? If this boarding would have been properly installed, if the foundation would have been that strong, so this casualty would have not happened.
Following the incident, officials have ordered a structural audit of all billboards in the city in efforts to prevent a similar occurrence. A high-level investigation has been launched. Local government will provide relatives of those killed with compensation payments of $6,000 per family. And now an update on the floods in Brazil. Following 2 weeks of heavy rains, more than 600,000 people have been displaced due to flooding and mudslides in southern Rio Grande do Sul state. At least 147 people have lost their lives, 800 injured, and more than 100 have been reported missing. And fresh rains are further hampering search and rescue efforts. The floods are the latest extreme weather conditions to hit Brazil following record-breaking forest fires, unprecedented heat waves and drought. The government and experts have blamed the El Nino weather phenomenon as well as climate change. Brazilian President Luiz Lula da Silva says that authorities were not properly prepared for a disaster of such magnitude. But how does a country prepare for extreme weather conditions? Part of the answer lies in knowing what lies ahead. That comes down to weather forecasting. BGTN's Brazil correspondent Chris Goldenbaum has that story.
Heavy rains and a cold front continue to impact the areas devastated by flooding in the south of Brazil. The situation is becoming increasingly worrisome, and scientists and experts are doing everything within their power to prevent the situation from worsening. Tempo OK is a meteorology company that uses technology, big data, and AI to develop high-precision weather prediction models. Maria Clara Sasaki, an expert at the company, explains the cause of the relentless rains in the south.
Bom, a gente tem uma combinação de fatores que contribuíram.
Well, we have a combination of factors that contributed to this very heavy historic rain over Rio Grande do Sul. Firstly, we have all the ocean waters with temperatures that are above normal, with values that have never been recorded before. We also have a warmer than normal atmosphere since last year with very high temperatures, well above average. And all of this has contributed to the formation of heavy clouds, because whenever we talk about higher temperatures, we're talking about energy, and the atmosphere is very energetic, and this contributes to the formation of rain clouds.
Isso contribui para a formação das nuvens de chuva.
She explains that authorities are actively predicting tragedies like this, but even with high-precision technology, it is not yet possible to predict much further than 2 or 3 days. She also warns that although these events have been happening more frequently in the past 20 years, people must be cautious about blaming it all on climate change.
de tempo. E a gente tem observado essa frequência de eventos extremos acontecendo.
And we've seen this frequency of extreme events happening, not only in the south of Brazil, but also here in the southeast. We've seen the eastern strip of the state of Sao Paulo with very heavy rains and landslides. In Rio de Janeiro, we have also recorded these extreme events with a certain frequency. This is certainly a condition we've never seen before, and it may be related to climate change. We have been observing a pattern of changes in weather conditions. However, we can't take an isolated event, which is the case of this rain in Rio Grande do Sul, and say that this event alone is related to climate change, because extreme events always happen. But in isolation, they cannot be related to a climate change event.
Só que isoladamente eles não podem estar relacionados a evento de mudança climática.
After heavy rains over the weekend, river levels are rising again. More than 500,000 people have been displaced from their homes, and rescue workers continue to search for those who are missing. Large parts of Porto Alegre, home to 1.5 million people, remain underwater, with the historic center particularly hard hit. Soldiers have been patrolling flooded neighborhoods in boats following reports of looting. As Brazil battles to recover from heavy rains and flooding, meteorologists are using technology to forecast severe weather conditions and be better prepared. Chris Goldenbaum, BGTN, São Paulo, Brazil.
Coming up, BRICS Business, but first a look at what's coming to BGTN soon. For many, dance in Africa is a rich cultural expression, serving various purposes like entertainment and religious rituals. However, over thousands of years, dance in Africa has been used as a secret way to communicate, sometimes during birth and death, frequently to each other, and at times directly to the gods. In BRICS Business News, the UK and Saudi Arabia are set to hold a meeting this week with the aim of strengthening trade and cultural ties. A British delegation of 450 business and cultural leaders are headed to the kingdom's capital, Riyadh, led by the Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden, Culture, Media and Sports Secretary Lucy Fraser, Investment Minister Dominic Johnson and the Minister at the Department of Health and Social Care, Nick Markham. The UK will be hosting an event called Great Futures. Our BGTN UK correspondent Hayley Bentley joins us now from London to tell us about the upcoming meeting. How does the British delegation plan on developing business and cultural ties with the Saudis at this event?
So this event is significant, with 800 participants from both the public and private sectors of the United Kingdom and Saudi Arabia taking part. Now, this conference will include 47 sessions and workshops with 127 speakers covering 13 economic sectors such as tourism, culture, education, health, sport, investment, trade, and financial services. And also, there will be 6 agreements signed in the fields of education and training, tourism, and real estate development. Now, during the opening session, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, in a video conference, emphasised that trade between the United Kingdom and Saudi Arabia has exceeded £17 billion, and he expressed the UK's strong interest in strengthening trade and cultural ties between the United Kingdom and the Saudi Arabian government, and that he hopes that this event will showcase British expertise across various sectors to support the development of future industries.
Will the UK try and tap into Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030?
Yes, absolutely. The sectors represented at this conference are those that can support Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, and this is the kingdom's plan to develop industries of the future. An expanded British role in projects under the Vision 2030 banner is a key goal for this British delegation, and Saudi Arabia is promoting 5 lead giga projects expected to attract $3 trillion of investment over the next 6 years. And the UK's Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden has said that the trade between the two countries are opening up, and that the two countries are opening up to each other, and that Britain doesn't just endorse Vision 2030, but that they want to be a part of it.
Can you tell us more about the educational partnerships already signed between the two nations?
There has already been much educational activity in the run-up to this Great Futures event, and the UK's Science Museum Group established the Museums Hub in Riyadh this past February. And this hub is to enable professors, researchers and educators in the United Kingdom and Saudi Arabia to work more closely together and to build what they call a centre of excellence for science and culture. And the two countries are also planning to establish an education task force, and this will be co-chaired by the UK's international education champion and the Saudi Minister of Education to enhance cooperation in higher education. And currently 40 educational partnerships have been signed, and the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow will become the first UK university to establish a physical presence in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you. Well, that was Hayley Bentley, our BGTN UK correspondent in London. In China, Beijing is warning the United States that new tariffs on Chinese imports could severely affect relations between the two nations. This after the White House announced plans to hike tariffs on $18 billion worth of imports from China, targeting sectors including electric vehicles, batteries, steel and critical minerals. The highest increase is the rate on electronic vehicles, set to quadruple to 100% this year. Semiconductors will surge from 25 to 50% by 2025. And these increases follow a review of tariffs imposed during a trade war between Washington and Beijing when Donald Trump was in office. He introduced levies on around $300 billion in goods from China. Beijing says it opposes the tariff increases and says they're not in line with the spirit of the consensus reached by the two heads of state, referring to a meeting between President Xi Jinping and Biden last year. China has pledged to take resolute measures to defend its own rights and interests. The United States has banned uranium imports from Russia, claiming the move will boost both its security and climate goals. Earlier this week, US President Joe Biden signed legislation prohibiting any imports from Russia, effective August the 12th this year. Despite a raft of sanctions being imposed on Russia over its invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the country reportedly provides 20 to 30% of the enriched uranium used in America and Europe, and 44% globally. The United States accuses Russia of using proceeds from uranium trades to partially fund its war on Ukraine. The US will now invest in uranium enrichment inside the country, using almost $3 billion released by the new legislation. Environmentalists, however, are divided on the use of this technology. Although it emits no carbon dioxide, responsible for the planet's fast rising temperatures, there are concerns about the possibility of accidents. Coming up in just a bit, BRICS Sports News with Yolanda Pondo.
Well, here we have it. Time to turn things around. You caught the taxi and watched the money drain out of your account. Now we're going to pay you if you are lucky enough to catch our taxi. Small problem. You've got to know a few things about BRICS. No, not the stuff you build your house with. Welcome to the BRICS on Wheels show.
Hello, I'm Yolanda Ponder with BRICS Sports News. We begin with the news on the much-anticipated heavyweight bout between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usk. And it's good news, the fight is back on again. It was supposed to have taken place in Riyadh on the 17th of February 2024. Now it's back on the cards and is scheduled to take place on the 18th of May in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Eyebrows were raised in some quarters when the fight was postponed after Fury suffered a cut during sparring just 2 weeks before the bout was scheduled to take place in February. Usk's camp had been left with the impression it would be several months before the Brits would be ready to reschedule the fight. However, a new date has been added into Saudi Arabia's sports diary, much to the delight of boxing fans around the world who have waited so long for this fight. And ahead of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, there's still a question mark hovering over the heads of Chinese swimmers' participation following the Japan Games doping scandal. It all revolves around the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA's April revelation that 23 Chinese swimmers tested positive for trimetazidine, a performance-enhancing drug, ahead of the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. There's been much criticism over the anti-doping agency's handling of the matter, with accusations there had been a cover-up. That's because the swimmers were not suspended nor sanctioned at the time, as WADA accepted the explanation of Chinese authorities who claimed the results were caused by food contamination at a hotel where they had stayed. Now the doping agency plans to hold an extraordinary meeting this week to discuss the case. The virtual meeting of its foundation board has been scheduled for this Friday. The agency says the objective of the board meeting is to provide members with the opportunity to be further informed on this important matter by WADA experts and to be able to ask any questions that they may have. An independent prosecutor will be present to review the global anti-doping body's handling of the case. And the Chinese swimmers' participation in Paris 2024 hangs in the balance. The International Olympic Committee says, however, if they are cleared, they can compete in this year's Games. For more sports stories, check out our website and social media. Coming up, BGTN Cares. Juliet will be chatting to her colleague Kaka Ngofe about the recently launched 22 seconds anti-trafficking campaign.
Round 3. Let's go. Right hand on 3 for super.
And finally, BGTN has launched the 22 Seconds Anti-Trafficking campaign. This initiative is aimed at shedding light on the alarming reality that one person is trafficked every 22 seconds somewhere in the world. The campaign was launched on the 1st of May and will continue until the 3rd of June. BGTN is raising awareness and inspiring action to combat human trafficking on a global scale. Our very own Kaka Ngofe heads up the campaign, and she joins me now in studio to chat about the project. Hi Kaka, thanks for joining us.
Hi Juliet, thank you for having me.
Kaka, now you've been working on a number of human trafficking stories. How has this impacted you personally?
I think every time when you come from a story, you go home and you just take a deep breath. Sometimes you cry. And I think the more I do these stories, it gives me a why that, like enables me to continue. Why am I doing this? And it makes me question myself sometimes that, am I even the right person to be doing these stories? Because you hear gruesome stories. But I'm so glad that I'm even doing them, because I don't think enough of them is being taken out there for the world to see what is actually happening around us.
Do you think that women are scared to come forward and tell their stories?
Many are, because they fear being judged by the world. Sometimes some of them have put themselves in situations which make them end up where they being trafficked. So many are. I think it's also a thing of the world is not accepting to these women because some of them end up being prostitutes. So a lot of people who don't really know what goes on in these syndicates are always judging them or not really exposed to what really happens. And then I think also it's a matter of we deal with authorities that are also part of these syndicates. So for them, some of them just decide that, you know what, I'm not going to share my story because it's not going to end up opening a can of worms. Because most of the women that I've spoken to often say that even with me speaking up on these stories, it means that I can always I always have to look, over the shadow because some of these people will hunt them down and, murder them for just speaking up. So that's what we're dealing with here.
So you'd say that some of the women don't even report it to authorities?
No, not at all. Many of them will tell you, actually, I've had a client or a perpetrator that was a policeman that was meant to protect me. So they don't see the authorities as the protector as they should. Because they take bribes also from the pimps. So this is what we're dealing with here. And I think even the police service is aware that this is what happens. But most of the chances, it's not really being dealt with. It's not really being tackled that can we call out these people? They're just scared and they just know that they'll tell you that, oh no, some of them take drugs with us.
So the name of your campaign, 22 seconds, I'm just picking out that part. I'm wondering, is that number a true reflection of exactly how many women are being trafficked?
It's not, because we don't have recent stats. There's not much being done on the stats side of things. There's a lot of cases that go unreported. There's a lot of women that have been trafficked but end up dead on the streets. So it's not a true reflection, but it at least gives us an idea. And it's already a bad, it's
alarming.
Whenever you think about it, it's like 22 seconds.
Somebody's being trafficked somewhere in the world.
It's bad.
Human trafficking, does that refer to women and men?
Yes. So a lot of people think when they think human trafficking, they only think women. It also happens to men. You get child soldiers. Most of them are trafficked. You get men that are trafficked into forced labor. We have that in South Africa. A lot of it is happening.
And even prostitution.
Yes. And especially even with, your migrants that come to South Africa or like your asylum seekers, they end up in those situations mostly because they come from vulnerable backgrounds and traffickers target these vulnerabilities.
What inspired you to start this campaign?
I think every story that I've went to has touched me in a way. Every girl that I've spoken to has made me think that this could have been me. It could have been my mother. It could have been a friend. And whenever you think about it, it has made me realize that it's not something that's, far from you. A lot of these stories are people that were trafficked by a friend, people that were trafficked by someone they trusted. And we all have these relationships that we trust around us. And when I thought about, the idea behind this campaign, it was like, let people know that it can easily be someone you trust. It can easily be your boyfriend. And these things often start small. The traffickers build trust with you. They use that to get you into the cycle of being trafficked or becoming a prostitute. And a lot of us don't even realize that it can just be your neighbor.
That's very, very frightening. How do you hope that this campaign is going to change those numbers?
I think this campaign is a campaign that is set to raise awareness to show the severity of this crime that's happening around us. It's a campaign that tackles and sparks this dialogue of trafficking in persons that's happening around us. And I'm hoping that it will get society to speak about it. It will get communities, governments and organizations to come together and tackle this. I'm hoping that it will get the young girl, the young boy to understand the dangers that we live around and to actually just know that there are some situations where, you know, you can't really control this crime because it doesn't have a face. Anyone can be a trafficker. And so I'm hoping that this campaign actually just raises awareness to people and makes people aware that this is real and it's happening anytime.
How can our viewers be a part of this campaign?
You can share the campaign firstly on social media using the hashtags 22 seconds not for sale, hashtag 22 seconds empower change, because we are empowering change. And please sign the petition. We have the links on all our social media platforms and also a QR code that you can scan and sign the petition. And the whole idea also behind the petition is that once we reach 22 million signatures, we will take it to the UN. And so it's a broader, it's for a bigger cause.
Of course. All the best with it, and thank you so much for coming in to chat to us about that.
Thank you so much, Juliet.
That's it for today. We'll be back again tomorrow. And in the meantime, you can check out our website and social media for updates.